Well, welcome everyone. Happy Wednesday. Today must be Black T-shirt Wednesday day. CJ, I like your outfit. You're looking good.
Thank you. Thank you. This is woolly. It's becoming winter up here in the Pacific Northwest, so got to stay warm.
What do you mean woolly? Is that a brand? Like a
No
wool
wool,
T-shirt?
like, from a sheep.
Oh, yes, yes, yes. It is made of wool. Okay.
Made of
So
wool, yes.
for those of you that are joining, CJ and I are on our executive team together. We're teammates, and we love CJ comes up with terminology, most of which adds a Y to the end of words, like expandy collapsy or woolly. So it's always fun to be like, wait, is that a New Zealand thing? Or is that you being CJ and just adding a Y onto the end of a word?
Sometimes both.
Yeah. Well, I am joining from Houston, Texas. CJ is in Seattle. It looks like I can see some sun on your face there, CJ. That's
It
rare.
is, it is. It's poking through the clouds for a change.
That's awesome. I love that. Well, we would love to hear where you are joining us from. So if you click on the chat at the bottom of your Zoom channel, you might need to change it to everyone where it says to send it. You've got like hosts and panelists or everyone. So click on everyone. And then, yeah, you nailed it. Caleb and Tammy, Sheila, can't wait to see where you're joining from. One of my favorite things I was just telling CJ about doing these webinars is how we are all over the country and sometimes all over the world. So we've got Oregon, Michigan, Texas, Canada. Hey, Daryl.
We've
Are
got a
you
New
having?
Zealander there as well. Nelson,
Oh,
New Zealand.
yeah.
Wow. Eric, welcome.
In Germany. How cool is that? Oh, that's awesome. Love to see it. This is awesome. I love it. Oh, yes. Hey, Kim from Mixbook. You guys, Mixbook, you got to check out. Kim dropped her LinkedIn here in the chat. They are exploding right now. It's a company where you can submit your photos and they make kind of like a photo album, like a scrapbook from your digital photos, and really, really cool company that's building a healthy culture there at Mixbook. So, hey, Kim, good to see you. All right. Well, thanks for joining us, everybody. I'm going to share my screen so you can see me and CJ's wonderful headshots, even though we are not in Black T-shirts in our headshots. And I promise we didn't plan that, which is hilarious. But I am Senior Vice President of Growth at Leadr. I've been on the team for 3 years now. And previous to joining Leadr, I was in executive search for about 9 years. And so what I love about what I get to do here at Leadr every day is work with leaders like you to, we're not just solving a hiring problem, which is what I did for 9 years before I joined Leadr. We're really solving organizational health. So it's the marathon of people development. How do we make sure that we're truly caring for and developing our people? Because when we do that, our business outcomes typically will take care of themselves. And so I love that I get to partner with folks like you to really figure out how do we do that well. So that's what I get to do all day, every day here at Leadr. I lead our marketing and our partnerships team. And we're going to talk about this in a minute, but one of the highlights of my whole career that has happened over the last 6 months is our partnership with the Table Group. And so it's been a joy to partner with their team as we really try to make organizational health simpler and easy for everybody. And I'm joined today by CJ, who is our CTO here at Leadr, has been on the team for a little over a year. CJ, would you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Holly. So yes, I've been here a little over a year. I run our product and engineering teams. So we are the team behind the scenes of Leadr, building all the great features and functionality that we bring to our customers. So I'm really glad to be here and talk to you a little bit about our approach to meetings and how we use Leadr to do that effectively.
That's awesome. Thank you, CJ. And one thing that I want to call out, CJ and I are both Working Genius certified. Are there any Working Genius fans here today? Would love, drop your Working Genius in the chat. I'll drop mine. I'm a DG.
I am an ID.
ID. Yeah, we have D in common. So we are both Working Genius certified, but that does not make us experts in any of this. So we actually might even have some principal consultants or fellow. Yeah, it looks like somebody in the chat just said, I'm also a Working Genius certified facilitator. That's awesome. So what we want to achieve today is just a raw conversation CJ and I both lead teams, very different sizes. We'll get into that in a second, very different teams, which is why we've come together today to just talk about our own challenges, mistakes, learnings, and wins along the way, as we've taken the table group concepts from the Advantage and the weekly tactical and the working genius and really applied that inside of our platform to help cascade clarity. But we're not principal consultants with the table group. We're figuring this out, boots on the ground, as we are leading our teams. And so I'm going to actually launch a poll first, and then I'll tell you a little bit about me and CJ's teams. So let's see here. I'm going to go to our polls. Here we go, polls and quizzes. All right. So on your screen, you're going to see a question pop up. I'm also going to put it here on the slide. Would love to hear from you. You got 1 minute to answer. Would love to hear from you how you would rate the effectiveness of your meetings. And while you're doing that, I'll share a little bit about my team. So I've got a lean, mean, and mighty marketing team is what I call us here at Leadr. There's only 3 of us, myself included. So I've got 2 direct reports. It's Anna, Carissa, and me on our marketing and partnerships team. And so that's very different from CJ's team. So CJ, tell us a little bit about your team and kind of your pods that you have.
Sure. So we're a team of 18 people, and my team is really interesting. It's a real mixture of different types of people, right? We've got developers and engineers who are in the code every day and building great features. We've got designers who are figuring out what something's going to look like and how it's going to work for our users and make sure it's going to work really, really well. And we've got product managers as well and QA people. And so we've got a really big spectrum of different types of people and their approaches to work, which makes for interesting meetings sometimes, right? You've got all sorts of different strengths and weaknesses and things like that. And so that's something we really have to keep in mind.
Mm-hmm. And one of the things that we discovered recently was, for those of you that are familiar with the Working Genius, CJ, tell us about galvanizing on your team in particular.
Yeah, that was a really interesting observation. So as part of the Leadr experience in meetings now, you can pull up a Working Genius map for your team. Automatically, it all maps it out for you if you put in your Working Genius results. And so one thing that we noticed when we get together as a team, the whole team all together, I pulled up the Working Genius map, and sure enough, we have literally zero galvanizers on our team. And in fact, it's even worse than that. It is a majority of us, we have it as a working frustration in our team. So we have to really overcompensate to make sure that we're thinking about that and what it means for our meetings, not having any strong galvanizers on the team.
That's so true, which is totally different from my little, 3-person marketing team. 2 of the 3 of us have galvanizing as a genius. So if you ever need to borrow some galvanizing, Carissa and I can come on over there to the product team and help you out. But yeah, that's such an important insight. Yeah, such an important insight. And so helpful to know how your team is shaped around our geniuses and our frustrations. All right, I'm going to end our poll so we can see the results here. Okay, so I'm going to end it. And let's see, did the results pop up? This is my first time to do a poll on Zoom. Can you guys see the results at all? Or you probably saw it potentially when you answered the question, but I'll tell you what it said if you can't see it. So here we go. Can you guys see the responses there? Okay, awesome. Okay, so clearly the majority of us feel meh, like, I don't know. They're okay. They're not great. They're not terrible, is how the majority of us feel. And then 37% of us feel pretty good about our team meeting effectiveness. So that is encouraging. Love to hear that. I think this is a really helpful question for you to even ask your team. Hey team, how would you rate the effectiveness of our meetings? As a leader, that can be very vulnerable to ask. I try to do that every once in a while with my team. Like, is this helpful? Is this not? Because we tend to lead meetings in the way that we prefer for them to be led based on the way that we're wired. So for example, as a DG, a discerner, and a galvanizer, I love meetings that are all about how we're going to get stuff done because I'm an activator. And so, but for someone who's a WI, they might hate my meetings. So the goal of this webinar together is effective meetings. What does that look like across the board? So really good to hear that more about half of us are not satisfied with our meetings. We think they're just okay. And then we've got 37% of us that we can learn from today. So feel free to drop your thoughts in the chat or the Q&A box as we go, so that we can all learn from each other today. Okay, why, for those of you that feel like your meetings are just meh, drop it in the chat and let us know why. What is it about your team meetings that you feel like they're just like, meh, they're okay?
I bet I know one, Holly.
Okay, tell me, CJ, what do you think?
One that we've noticed that we really struggle with, and actually having implemented some of these principles has really helped with, is this concept of meeting elevation and stew, right? Of different elevations of meetings. Like, what are we there to talk about? Are we there for a WI meeting or are we there for an ET? And that has really helped us by separating those out and being really clear and open with each other about what we're there, what elevation our meeting is at.
So true.
There are others that are suffering from that same problem.
Yeah, Kim put the same thing, meeting stew. That's Patrick Lencioni calls that what you just said, CJ, where it's like one moment we're talking about this really big wonder question of like, okay, what problem are we actually trying to solve? And then the next minute we're talking about like a super detailed, specific tactical thing. And so it can feel like turbulence, like our meetings are just all over the place. So that's a good point. Cassie says, tangential discussions that steer away from the agenda and take extra time. Absolutely. Those rabbit trails. I know I can be guilty of that. I like to chase rabbits sometimes. I gotta bring them back to like, what is the purpose of this meeting? Lack of participation. So true. Eric says, try to do too much in a weekly meeting. Yep. Caleb says, not always leaving with clarity. Yeah, there's nothing more frustrating than leaving a meeting going, wait a second, what decisions did we make and who's supposed to do what and by when? So hopefully you'll leave here, Caleb, with some tips and tricks on that a bit. Jen says information only without tracking any action items. Yes, very similar to that, where it's like, wait, but what is CJ going to do and what's Holly going to do? Let's see, meetings can turn into talking about everything and it gets off track quickly. Dave says we're getting better, but there's still a lot of old habits. Yeah, old habits die hard, right? Let's see. Derek says, talking about working genius, WIs pulling galvanizers, enablers, and tenacity folks off and vice versa. When we don't make decisions and just talk through things, competing geniuses. Yeah, he said, yes, that's exactly what happens. Meetings stew. Haley says lack of conflict. Everyone goes along with the leader of the meeting. Haley, that is such good insight. That's something that we don't talk about enough, that Pat Lencioni says is the most critical part of effective meetings is having healthy conflict. The key word there is healthy, right? We don't want to disrespect our teammates, but really being able to make sure that we're voicing differing opinions and thoughts and really keeping in mind what's best for our business or our organization. So good. Awesome. Well, let's dive in to a little bit about our partnership with the Table Group and how CJ and I got so passionate about this concept of the weekly tactical meeting with our own departments. And then we're going to give you a resource as well. So on the right-hand side is a QR code. We have this incredible blog article that Anna on our team created. It's a in-depth, step-by-step of what we're going to talk about today. So if you want to scan that QR code, or you can just chat into the chat, we can drop it in there too. But just to equip you, if you start to feel like, oh my goodness, I got to write all this down, don't worry about it. We've got this blog article here that's going to walk you through it step by step of the weekly tactical. But on the left-hand side, you'll see pictures of our team with Pat Lencioni and the crew at the Table Group. And so it sounds like most of us today are familiar with the Table Group and Pat Lencioni, but if you're not, Pat really was the pioneer of this concept of organizational health. And so he has been carving out this concept that we have inside of our organizations and our companies. We have healthy and smart. And we need both of those things to effectively accomplish our goals, but that typically healthier organizations get smarter. It's very rare that smarter organizations get healthier, and unless we're really intentional about it. And so he's written a myriad of amazing books, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Ideal Team Player, The Advantage, which is really where the concept we're going to talk about today come out of. Working Genius has been his most recent one that has taken the world by storm with his productivity and personality assessment called the Working Genius. And so they reached out to us back in, I believe it was March. And their question was, hey, we get to work with thousands of organizations all around the world on a regular basis on what they call the 4 disciplines of organizational health. And so they get to go in and help create clarity on leadership teams and make sure that that leadership team is cohesive. And what they really wanted to explore was, how could we use technology to help cascade that clarity down the org chart? Because I don't know about you guys, but I mean, even speaking for CJ and I here at Leadr, we often get really clear as a leadership team, but where we can get bottlenecked is that mid-level manager, where it's not their fault. It's usually our fault. we're not clear enough, or we're not resourcing them with the action items or the resources they need to be able to cascade that clarity to their teams. And so we want to make sure that our frontline employees have just as much clarity as we do at the executive level. And so that's what we've partnered with the Table Group to create. And we launched the Table Group experience inside of our platform a few months ago. And it has just been so much fun to partner with them and learn from them as together we really take organizational health to the next level. So CJ, anything you want to add to that? I love this top picture there where they're all gathered around your phone as you're showing your Working Genius map there.
Yeah, I promise that wasn't staged. That was just a serendipitous, organic moment. We were showing off some of the work we'd been doing in Leadr to the Table Group team. It was a great moment.
It's awesome. So good. All right. So let's jump in here to, I kind of briefly talked about this, but these are the 4 disciplines of organizational health. And so this is really taken from the book, The Advantage. If you haven't read it, highly recommend it. It's so good. And so what Pat talks about is, the first step is we have to build a cohesive leadership team. This is what Haley just put in the chat. It's, do we have a team where in meetings we have enough trust and accountability that we can really challenge each other and have healthy conflict? Then we want to create clarity. So what does it look like to have clear objectives where at the leadership level, we know the answer to what is the most important thing right now? And if we at the leadership level can't answer that question clearly, then it's going to be really difficult for us to expect our frontline employees to be able to know what they're supposed to be working on and how they're supposed to be working on it and by when. That's where a lot of the confusion and politics can happen inside of an organization. So once we're clear on those 2, then we want to over communicate. And I love that he says over communicate here, because it's not just a one-time meeting where we're, rolling out our annual objectives. And that's what CJ and I are going to dive into. Like, how do we do this on a weekly basis? Over communicating that clarity as chief reminding officers. And then we want to reinforce it. So in every rhythm that we have as an organization, how do we daily reinforce that clarity across the organization? So that's Pat's hot take, is that organizational health looks like these 4 disciplines. Well, our hot take, the problem that we've been trying to solve for the last 5 years, is, why is it so hard? Why is it so hard to cascade this clarity across an organization? This is the pain that our founders, when they started Leadr, that they had at their former company. They grew from 0 to 500 employees in just a few years, and poured millions of dollars into, conferences, and they had a CEO book club, and they had weekly staff meetings, but they still were struggling to develop their people as fast as their company was growing. And so for them, they realized, we are lacking a tech solution that creates that clarity up top and cascades that down across the entire organization. And so that's where our partnership with the Table Group is just this perfect marriage of taking Pat's philosophy of how you do that through his principles, and giving a platform that enables every single person on our team to really implement that clarity on a regular basis. So CJ, you've been the one kind of behind the scenes really building this inside of the platform. So I'm curious to hear your take on the marriage between the philosophy and the platform.
Yeah, well, isn't it strange that we live in the most technologically advanced time on Earth, and yet these problems are harder than ever, right?
Yes.
And people are still really grappling with them. And I think some of that is due to more recent changes in the workforce. We've got more people working remotely than ever before, which really also makes it more of a challenge to disseminate and to over communicate with folks and drive that clarity. And so when we sat with the table group and were thinking through this, like we were really invigorated and inspired by not only the philosophy but the opportunity to help with technology that could bring some of those philosophies with the technical eye into an organization and really help them drive into their organization. And so, like you said, we've been working with them for quite a few months now and been doing quite a lot on the Leadr platform to help support this. And you'll see some screenshots later in the presentation about some of that work that we've been doing and how that happens inside the Leadr platform. But I'm really excited about it. It's certainly helped us and it's helping our customers. So we're on the right track there, I think.
That's so good. I love that you brought that up, CJ, of like, why are we living in the most technologically advanced moment in history, yet this gets harder and harder? I think because there's so much noise too. There's so much coming at us, so many competing priorities. I know a lot of the leaders I talk to on a daily basis are just exhausted. And I think it's because of a lot of the disciplines 3 and 4, it feels like we have to over communicate more than ever because our teams are just being bombarded by information overload all the time. And so we really want to help simplify that as much as we can. All right. So what I'm about to share, for those of you that are nerds like us and you love the book, The Advantage, a lot of this is going to be familiar to you, but for some of you, you might be like, they are speaking Greek. What in the world are CJ and Holly talking about with weekly tacticals and 4 disciplines? So I really thought it would be helpful to make sure we're all on the same page about the weekly tactical framework. Because then we're going to dive in and show you how CJ and I do this with our teams on a weekly basis. So the first thing, when we're jumping into a weekly tactical, I know this is obvious, but this is on a weekly basis. I see too many teams that have department or all hands meetings too few times, like maybe it's once a month. There's a great book by Stephen Covey that is called Organizations, or his concept is Organizations Move at the Speed of Trust. And I think in a time, to CJ, your point, like the world moves faster than ever. It's really critical that we're meeting with our teams at least on a weekly basis. For us as the leaders, that can feel like overkill, but I think the moment that we feel like it's overkill is the moment where our direct reports feel like, okay, this is probably the right cadence because we have all the context. We're in all the meetings. They're not. And so that weekly time with your team is so critical to clarity and effectiveness. So the first step is what Pat calls the thematic goal. And he refers to this as the rally cry, because it's really rallying your company, your organization around the answer to this question. What is most important right now? What is most important right now? It sounds like a really simple question, but it's actually hard because there are so many things that are important. The question is, what is the most important thing right now? And so to start at the executive level, to be able to answer that question so succinctly, whether it's this month or this quarter or this next 6 months, and Pat actually recommends that that's typically about a 6-month answer to what's most important right now. For some organizations, it might be shorter than that. For some, it might be longer. But typically it's like a six month or so answer to that question. And so then for each of your departments or teams, you want to also be able to answer that question. Okay, based on our company answer to what's most important right now, the marketing team has an answer to what's most important right now. The product team has an answer to what's most important right now. so that we're all on the same page about how is the work that we're doing really moving our organization forward. So that is the thematic goal, and or also referred to as the rally cry. In the book, The Advantage, Pat talks about the 6 critical questions. And so this is the answer to number 5, what's most important right now. Okay, so that's the thematic goal and the rally cry. Does that make sense, CJ? Anything you'd add that I'm missing?
Absolutely. I mean, this is so important and so critical to frame up that we put it on our homepage of Leadr. So you log into Leadr and every day you go to Leadr Home. It's your first experience you see, and it's right there in front of you every day. And it's just a good reminder of all the turmoil going on in your daily work life, what is literally the most important thing that you should be focused on.
So good. Okay, the next thing that we talk about in our weekly tactical is what Pat refers to as the defining objectives. And so these are typically about 4 to 6. There's not a magic number here, but we don't want to have, too many to where we get distracted from what's most important right now, but we want to have enough to where we actually can solve the thematic goal that we're working on. So it typically lands between 4 and 6. We as an executive team here at Leadr have 5 defining objectives for our business. And so that's kind of what has, worked out for us in this season with our thematic goal. So these are general categories of activity required to achieve the thematic goal. Here's what's really important about defining objectives. And I know for me personally, this, as I've been learning this framework, and again, I'm not an expert, I'm learning, as I go, but what I had to kind of shift my brain into qualitative versus quantitative. So we probably have a spectrum of folks on the call today. So some of us are very metrics driven, numbers driven. We love to have a number for every single goal, so we know exactly what winning looks like, which is great. And then others of us might steer away from that because numbers and metrics are scary. I know for me, I can feel paralyzed if I have a number on my head that I'm, afraid I won't hit, or whatever that looks like. And so we can lean more towards the qualitative. We need both, right? And that's one of the things I love about this framework is he has both qualitative and quantitative. But defining objectives are specifically supposed to be qualitative. So there's not necessarily a number that goes with your defining objectives. There might be, but don't feel like you need to have a metric that defines your defining objectives. The way that you should be thinking about your defining objectives are, what are the leading indicators? What are the activities that we need to be doing to make our thematic goal be true? So maybe, if our thematic goal is to improve our customer experience over the next 6 months, then maybe our defining objectives, one of them might be to create a customer advisory board that, where we are interviewing our customers on a regular basis, right? It's qualitative, it's not quantitative. Another one might be to audit our current onboarding workflow to see what's working and what's not. So there's not a number attached to it, but in order for us to improve our customer experience, these are a couple of activities or buckets that we need to do in order to make sure that that's true. So CJ, I'm going to jump to standard operating objectives, and then I'd love to hear your thoughts on the difference between the two.
Sure.
So the next thing that Pat talks about is standard operating objectives. And so these are your quantitative ones. These are the ones, this is what needs to happen in order to keep your company or your organization running, right? What keeps the lights on? So this might have to do with people, with hiring or retention goals, right? This definitely probably has to do with cash. No matter what type of, if you're in a nonprofit setting or a for-profit setting, you need cash in the bank. So what does that number look like for your team? This might have to do with sales or marketing leads or, a myriad of different different standard operating objectives that keep your company running. These do not have a timeline. These are things that we need to keep our eye on all the time. So like one of ours here at Leadr is since we are a technology company, it's our uptime of our platform. We want to make sure that that is as best as possible, right? That our product doesn't go down. And so that's something that we want to be looking at on a daily and definitely a weekly basis. So this is where, for our numbers people, this is where numbers come in, where metrics come in, to really make sure that we have our eye on what is necessary to keep our organization running. So that's the difference between defining objectives. They relate specifically to the thematic goal. They're qualitative in this season. And then standard operating objectives are our numbers, our KPIs, our metrics that keep the business running on a daily, weekly, monthly, annual basis. And that's where our numbers come in. So CJ, what did I miss? What stuck out to you, the differences between defining and standard operating objectives as you've been incorporating this framework?
I might be showing my age here for a second, Holly, but I think of standard operating objectives as like the dial tone of the organization, right? You just expect them
What's
to
the
be
dial
there.
tone? No,
I don't know. It's
I'm
that
just
old school
kidding.
thing when phones were a thing. It's they're just the dial tone of the organization. They're always there. There's no end date to them. They're just what keeps your organization operating efficiently and just has to be there. And so for us, that's things like you mentioned, like making sure the service is up and running, 99.99% of the time, making sure we're addressing issues and things like that with a speedy turnaround. Whereas defining objectives, they might come and go based on the season of what you're trying to achieve, right? So, and you'll see this as we show our own tactical team meeting. You'll see how these show up in the Leadr product to remind you and make sure you go through them regularly and that you're checking in on them.
Yes, so good. That's great. The dial tone is a great example. You're not showing your age. It's so true.
It's going to be lost on people very soon.
Yeah, if there's any Gen Zers on the webinar, they might be like, "What is a dial tone?" Yeah. All right, and then as Pat also talks about in the advantage, we are talking about the weekly tactical today. That's what we're diving deep on. But he also talks about 3 other types of meetings: so daily check-ins or daily huddles. And then the monthly strategic meetings, and then quarterly offsite reviews. And so this is kind of his blueprint or recommendation of when we have a thematic goal, defining objectives, and standard operating objectives in these 4 types of meetings. This should guide us. These are our North Stars. This is the answer to what's most important right now. There was all that pain in the chat around why are our meetings they're just kind of like, okay, they're not great. And a lot of it was, getting off task or not having clarity or distraction. The thematic goal, defining objectives, and standard operating objectives are really our North Star that can help us keep our team focused and on track. Okay, with that, we're actually going to show you what this framework looks like inside of the Leadr platform. And so, you can absolutely do this on PDF or a legal notepad. Of course, in our platform, it just makes it more simple and collaborative where everything is in one place. But this is what this framework looks like for our Leadr customers as they live this out inside of the platform. So first and foremost, when you're having your weekly tactical, your thematic goal automatically populates based on the team that's in that meeting. And so you'll see that with our marketing team and our product team meeting, it automatically pulls in. Then this is where we have our defining objectives, and you can rank these red, yellow, green. So when you get into that meeting on a weekly basis, the goal is that you're, updating these either ahead of time or at the very beginning of the meeting. So when you get in there, if it's green, you don't really have to talk about it. I mean, you can if you want to, but you're really trying to focus our time on the yellow and red defining objectives and standard operating objectives, because that's what needs our time and attention that week. And so you can click on these and expand them, see goal history, all of that good stuff. But again, the point is that we want to have clarity on what's most important right now, this thematic goal. What are the objectives that tie directly into that thematic goal? And then what are those operating objectives that just are standard and the dial tone of our business that we just need to have happening all the time? And we really want to focus on the yellow and red. So then when you get into your lightning round, where this is what's front of mind for everyone that day, those typically should be related to your defining objectives and standard operating objectives, particularly the ones that are yellow or red. That's where the lightning round comes in order for us to inform, okay, what are we actually going to talk about in this meeting? What are the tactical things that we need to discuss in order to turn these yellow and reds into greens? So I'm going to pause there before I jump into the marketing, my marketing team meeting, CJ, but anything you would add to the framework here to help us kind of bring it all together?
Yeah, you've gone into those, everybody I'm sure on this webinar has been into those meetings where you all rock up and you're all ready to be productive and nobody's really sure. Things go off the rails and go in different directions and things like that. One of the things I love about following the advantage, especially as it comes to the weekly tactical, is it's an execution plan for the meeting, right? You start at the high level with your rally cry, make sure you all review that and what's the most important thing is right now. And then it gives you structure to talk about your defining objectives. So you don't just skip over stuff and just jump to the super tactical in the weeds pieces before you've sort of set the stage for the rest of the meeting with everybody. So I just love that it gives you a plan and a framework to work through so that you don't miss anything.
Absolutely. It's so true. All right, so let's dive in. This is Caleb asked in the chat, like, can you show us some examples? So this is our real marketing team meeting that the three of us, and this will be really cool because you're going to get to see a glimpse of, again, how I, as a executive leader, but of a team of 3, and then CJ as an executive leader, but a team of like 20 people with multiple teams under his leadership, of how this looks different. And so again, you're going to see our thematic goal. And so this is our marketing team's thematic goal, which is support the company. We have a funny phrase. We like to come up with fun project names here at Leadr. So ours is streamlining salmon right now, because we're trying to catch big fish. So yeah, it's haha laughs. That's what salmon is. If you're like, wait, Leadr is not a fishing company. You're right. We're not. But that is kind of our fun project name that we've rallied the team around. And so as a marketing team, what that looks like for us is to make sure that we have a successful partnership with the table group. We feel so grateful and lucky to be able to have this partnership. Our job is to make sure that that's successful. And then, of course, we want to make sure that we are helping as a marketing function, that we're helping our sales team, our customer success team, our product team, and making sure that they are enabled and have all of the resources they need to communicate with all of you wonderful people what we're up to here at Leadr, and how we can help you achieve your goals. So that is our thematic goal that is at the front of every single weekly tactical that we have to make sure that we're focused on those things. And then we actually have 2 defining objectives as a team. I know I just told you that it should be like 4 to 6, but this is a great example of a learning as we try to cascade that down from the executive team. Like, CJ and I and our other 3 executive team members, we have 5 defining objectives, but our marketing team, we've chosen 2 that we're focused on that relate directly to our thematic goal. And again, we're a team of 3, so that makes a little bit more sense for us to have just 2. I think if we had any more than 3, it would be overwhelming for a team of 3 people. So we've chosen 2. And so we have 2 qualitative buckets or objectives that we're working on to support that thematic goal. And then under that, we've got our standard operating objectives. And so for us as a marketing team, number 1, team culture, like that's something that I, as the leader on our marketing team, I want to make sure we're not burning out. I want to make sure that, Carissa and Anna are engaged and growing in their roles and that we're operating really healthily as a team. And so that's a standard operating objective that I think about and that we talk about on a weekly basis. And then we've got partnerships and lead generation, product marketing, customer marketing. So like these are the operational things that our team is thinking about on a daily and weekly, monthly, annual basis that make the company run. Whereas the defining objectives are specifically related to our thematic goal and are more qualitative. So again, just kind of a repeat of what we just saw, but I wanted you to see like in real life how my team of 3, what this looks like in ours. And no, they're not always green. We are not perfect at all. But the expectation that we have internally is that Anna and Carissa will go in and update those. We have our meetings on Friday mornings. And so the expectation is that they'll update those on, by Thursday night before the meeting on Friday morning. So when we get in there, we can see what's green, what's yellow, what's red, and have great conversations around that. And then this is our agenda. And so these are recurring agenda items that show up automatically in Leadr for all of our, and I've set these up, like these are ones that I've chosen. This is not, not every Leadr customer will see these. You get to choose your own adventure with the agenda. So I'm so curious to see yours, CJ, because I know they look different. But for us, we always start our meeting just as a team. We kind of have a value of being on the offense versus the defense. We want to be proactive as a marketing team. And so we always just start our meeting with this question. It's just kind of a good, icebreaker for us as we reflect on the week. How did we do being on the offense, and help encourage each other, celebrate those wins, and help, any of those areas where we feel like we're behind or we're having to be on the defense. Then we go into the rally cry of, that concept around salmon again. But this is a great question because it helps me hold myself and our team accountable for, is there anything that we're doing that does not align with our thematic goal? And so I just really create space for us to have that conversation each week, because we go, oh, wait, yeah, we took on that project that didn't have anything to do with our thematic goal that took 15 hours this week. And no wonder we're now behind on these other things that did have to do with our thematic goal. So it just really helps us hold ourselves accountable for that. And then we hold space for our defining objectives, anything we need to communicate, or any problems that we need to solve and get tactical on for any of those yellow or green defining objectives. Same thing for the standard operating objectives. And then this one is really great. So this is parking lot for strategic meetings. This comes out of the Advantage framework. And what I love about this one is, if you find yourself in what we talked about with like meeting stew, and if you find yourself spending more than like 5 minutes on a problem, that's probably an indicator that you should have a strategic meeting about that separately from your weekly tactical. Because I don't know about you guys, but there's been times where what was supposed to be an hour meeting turned into like 2 hours because we spent way too much time on one agenda item, when really we should have scheduled a separate meeting to tackle that problem and, continued on our agenda in our weekly tactical. And so this is where we'll we kind of call each other out. If we're like, wait a second, we've spent more than 5 minutes on this. We should probably have a strategic meeting. There's clearly some discussion or context that we lack, or something that we need to have more conversations about here. And then this is a really helpful, the last one, decisions we made in cascading communication. This is really helpful for us to have healthy end of meeting discipline. So what decisions did we make, and what needs to be communicated to other people or other teams? And so this is where we can really make sure we're leaving our meetings with that clarity that we all want. And so making sure we have an agenda item and we're actually, documenting or recording, okay, Carissa needs to go talk to CJ about when that new, product release is happening. And then Anna needs to go talk to Dan to see when we need to roll out that next webinar to our customers. I'm getting really, really clear on that at the end of the meeting. So this is what our weekly tactical for our marketing team looks like. So CJ, I'm so curious to see yours. Let's pull it up.
Yeah, ours is a little different. So
yeah, go for it.
I've shown the whole sort of screen here to try and give you a bit more of an overview of what this looks like when we're actually all in the meeting together. We all pull this up. And I like to think of it as like the single pane of glass that lets you run your meeting and everything's visible, right? So you've talked through the thematic goal at the top and the defining objectives and standard operating objectives, and you see those here. And we have a few more of them. Some of them we've got one in there that's orange, for example, where something is, not on track. And so it's been marked as orange, and we get to dive into that and discuss it and help build out our agenda. And talk through those things that might need it. But in addition to that, it just gives you the ability to see and be reminded, hey, like, here's the high level stuff you need to talk through. Don't skip this stuff, because this is what really makes the difference. And then as you're going through and building out your agenda, I personally and my team really like the ability to come in here ahead of time and add things that they want to talk about. So it could be the week before, and it's just a great parking lot and a reminder. So you're not just rolling into a meeting and had forgotten about something from a week ago that you're supposed to bring up and have to go back to your notes to find. I will often find us in our executive leadership team talk about a topic, and as we're talking about it, I'll come into my own product team's tactical meeting and add it as an item that we want to talk about. So I'm reminded for our next one to bring that up. Now, I know not all teams are like that, and some will want to build this on the fly. Us personally, we like to come in and add things, some of them ahead of time. And then everybody gets to go in and see what's on the docket for that meeting, and bring any information or data or whatever it happens to be that they need to help that discussion along. In addition to that, you can see over on the right-hand side, the thing that says widget, the cogs, right? The working genius, right in line with the meeting. So we can pull that up. I can remind myself, hey, like Isaac's a wanderer. That's right. Like we've got to, he's going to be wanting to make sure that we're thinking about like, what are all the wonderful things we could go and do to address this, or hey, is this really a problem, and things like that. And so we've got that ability just to remind ourselves of each of our different personality types and what we're going to be pulling the meeting towards, or making ourselves aware of us pulling the meeting towards. And it's just a really nice reference point to have in there. And so again, that's all dynamically built based on who's in that meeting. It's a great reference point. And so this is a great way to collaboratively build the meeting. This is not somebody rolling in with a piece of paper with their notes for the meeting. This is available to everybody in the meeting. And so whether maybe after the meeting, you want to go back and review, hey, what were the topics we discussed? Or you want to write some additional notes or send a recap email or something like that after the meeting, you've got it right all in one place. And everybody's notes and topics and things have ended up there. So it's that nice single pane of glass, but also collaborative where people can go and do that. And then the biggest change for us was we got really crisp about the difference between our tactical meeting and a strategic meeting, like you talked about, right? We call ourselves out on it, when one of us is dragging ourselves into a wonder discussion, we're like, no, hold on. This is not the right meeting for this. Like we have a pre-planned meeting time set, usually for the Thursday following our tactical, which is usually on a Monday, where we carve out time to specifically talk about the WI sort of level of working genius type topics, where we have to really start wondering about things. And we try to keep this really tactical. And we call each other out on it, which has been a really good change in our team and has really helped the productivity of this tactical meeting every Monday has really improved because of that. And then in terms of cascading comms, we have a so my leads from the team, we meet on this tactical meeting on Monday. We also have a meeting on Tuesday with the whole product team, and often there are things we talk about in this meeting, in our tactical meeting, that we cascade and talk about in that all hands the next day. And so we use action items and things to capture those and make sure we know who's responsible for going and disseminating that information into the other parts of the team. So it's been a real game changer for us, applying the advantage and some of those aspects to it, but also from a leader perspective and the product perspective, just having that single pane of glass and really coaching you through how to stay on track and run a really productive tactical meeting has been super helpful.
So good, CJ. And Anna is actually dropping screenshots of the Working Genius map, because I was like, oh, as you were talking about, I was like, yeah, we didn't put a screenshot on our slide here of what that looks like. And it's one of the coolest parts of the weekly tactical. And so if you want to click on those that Anna just dropped, you'll see when you click on here, I'll put my cursor over here on view all, it will actually create a map of your entire team's working genius. So where are your frustrations, where are the geniuses, where everybody on that team lies. And then in the widget here, you can see that CJ has a lot of D and T on his team. But then what he talked about earlier, where there's like literally no galvanizers
right.
on his product team. And so it's so helpful to be able to have that front and center inside of your weekly tactical. So to your point, CJ, you can kind of call each other out and be like, wait a second, we're not wondering right now,
Yeah. And the galvanizing, the realization that we have no galvanizers on the team just really resonates with me. And so I see that every time we have a tactical meeting, I'm like, yeah, I've got to remember there are no galvanizers here. We've got to really pay attention to that and make sure that we're sort of over pivoting on that and putting more on ourselves to make sure that we're rallying people around the ideas that we've discerned.
So good, CJ. And the other thing you said that I really appreciated was because around this topic of like cascading clarity, you've mentioned, we'll have a conversation in our executive team meeting, which is on Monday. then you go into your weekly tactical, or like you'll go in and add agenda items as we're having conversations in ELT to park those inside of your product team's weekly tactical. And then inside of your product team weekly tactical, you're taking some of those topics that you know you need to cascade to the rest of the organization for your Tuesday all product team meeting. And so that's a perfect example of when everything's in one place, you're able to easily and quickly drop those different agenda items in those different meetings to help hold you accountable to make sure you're over communicating that clarity and reinforcing that clarity in each of those different layers of leadership. So powerful. Really appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah, and it's doing it in an organized way, right? So I have a to-do list that's 1,000 things long, right? I've got lots of things I've got to go do, but being able to have it in an organized manner, right within the tactical team meeting, means that I don't have to trawl through that list and find those things. It's all in one place for me when we get to that meeting.
It's so true. And that's what's so unique about this. That it's not a project management software. Like, we have not created a project management software. This is not HR, right? This is how do we as a team get work done together in the most healthy and effective way possible. That's organizational health, having a cohesive leadership team, getting that clarity, over communicating that clarity, reinforcing that clarity at every level of leadership. So good. All right, well, we're going to jump into Q&A. We had a couple questions that came over ahead of time that I want to answer. And then we have a few questions in the Q&A box, as well as chat. So now is the time. We've got about 10 minutes left together. Drop your questions there so I can try to get to as many of them as possible. But while we're doing that, we've got 2 resources for you. So the one on the left is that team meetings resource. So this is a downloadable PDF where you can actually implement everything that we have done today and start practicing this framework. And then on the right side is actually a 5-minute product overview. I'm so sorry, you'll actually have to hear more of my voice. I know you've heard a lot of it today. This is me walking you through my Leadr table group experience. It's less than 5 minutes if you want to learn more about what this could look like for you and your team. So grab those QR codes, and I'm going to start working on our questions. All right, CJ. So a couple that came over ahead of time. It said, how can we keep the agenda shorter? There seems to be 10 to 20 bullet points for a 1 to 1.5 hour meeting, and we continually go 2 to 3 hours instead because we get caught up in some of the bullet points. So what do you think? What's your best advice on that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've all fallen for that in one way, shape, or form, right? One of the things that's really worked for me and my team is that, again, that concept of carving out specific time for different elevations of meetings, right? So carving out that specific time for a strategic meeting later in the week where you can park bigger topics that really need that wonder and discussion piece. And so that you're keeping your tactical meeting very tactical, right? Each topic you talk about should be pretty fast and lickety split, right? Easy to cover off and get through. And so we'll catch ourselves. You have to hold each other accountable to that. Make sure you carve out time well in advance, right? So make sure you've got time pre-booked, even if you don't use it every week or every second week. If you've got a 1.5 or 2 hour strategy meeting, in our case, it's on a Thursday. So it's a bit later in the week. We don't always use it. Sometimes we cancel it, and it's perfectly okay to cancel it, but it gives you that breathing room to absorb the sort of the bigger strategy questions or topics that you should not really be discussing in your tactical meeting. And I think if you do that, you'll find that your tactical meetings just stay much more on track, much more on point. And you don't get caught up in those big sort of wonder discussions that really take a lot of time and discussion. And then the second thing is just being really honest with each other. If things are going over time and are really like devolving into, big talkative discussions, that you hold each other accountable to that, and it actually helps. And then the last thing I would say is just make sure everybody in the meeting knows what elevation the meeting is at. Mm-hmm. Discuss what it means to be having a tactical meeting, and discuss what it means to not have the space to talk about those strategy topics and wonder topics in that meeting. And so everybody's going into it with the right mindset, and you'll find that your meetings really get a lot crisper and people in general stay a lot more on track more easily.
Absolutely. So good, CJ. That's great advice. Okay, another one is it looks like, so this is a team of about 30. There's quite a few part-time. It looks like people are working at all different hours and different time slots. And so what does that look like to really create clarity and cohesion for a team that is either remote or part-time or different hours? So CJ, I want to let you speak to this from a remote perspective, because you have, I think, almost, if not almost every time zone represented on your remote team.
Yeah, time zones within the US.
Within the
So
US, that's true.
we're not a global team, but we are a countrywide team. So yeah, our team it's a unique team actually at Leadr. We have nobody that works in our Leadr headquarters down in Dallas. So my whole team is spread out all over the country. And so this is a really interesting problem for remote teams to solve. Like I mentioned earlier, one of the first things you see when you go into Leadr is Leadr Home. It's the first thing you see when you walk in the morning, and it shows you, here are the meetings I've got for today. Here are the people I'm working with. Excuse me. Here are my activities and tasks that I have to catch up on. And the most important thing on that page is reminder of the rallying cry and what the most important thing is to focus on. And so that's a great way just to make sure that everybody's starting on the same page about what the most important thing is. And it might seem silly to start with that you're reinforcing this every day, but it just sort of adds up. And so getting clarity and driving that over communication super important as a starting point. The second thing is getting your goals and objectives into one place, so that when people add their status updates and their traffic lights, the red, green, and yellow updates, that it doesn't matter what time zone you're in. When that person logs in, they can see the status of their objectives or the objectives that you're working on, get the status updates on those, and be really caught up to speed on what's really going on in the team. And then finally, being able to add topics ahead of time, sometimes in a tactical meeting, or see the notes for a meeting that happened while you weren't able to be there, is another great way to, for those folks that maybe in a far off time zone or weren't able to participate for another reason, are able to catch up on what's been happening and stay aligned.
So good. You know how when we all used to be in person all the time and remote was not a thing, you would have, like in a break room, like a bulletin board where announcements would be posted, or, most important things, make sure everybody was updated. I think one of the challenges in this day and age where work looks so different is it's like, what is that bulletin board today? Like, how do we make sure we keep things front of mind? I think where things like intranets or even Slack, I love Slack. I'm like addicted to Slack, but it can even feel messy because they're all inundated. So it's like intranets are full of thousands of different documentations, and Slack has thousands of different communication, and our email is overloaded. And so what we want to do with Leadr is simplify all of that to keep the most important things that have to do with our people and organizational health front of mind every single day. So I love the pane of glass analogy that you used a minute ago of like, how do we create that simplicity and clarity to get all the other noise out of the way, that at the end of the day today, the most important thing you could accomplish is this. So that's really good.
Slack and Teams are awesome for that ad hoc, asynchronous communication. But it can be overwhelming. Like you said, you've got thousands of messages. If you step in for the first time in the day, if you have to trawl back through all those thousands of messages, it can get pretty overwhelming quickly. And so having all of the most important pieces all in one place where you can get easy updates, super important.
So good. We've got, oh man, we've only got like 1 minute left. One of the questions we got is, how do we combine, and I think we covered this pretty well, but the insights from Working Genius and the meeting model from the Table Groups Death by Meetings or the Advantage. And so that's really what we have, designed inside of Leadr. And so those screenshots with the map of Working Genius, to have it all right there. I think the problem is we take those tests or assessments, we get really excited about it, and then we go about getting our work done. And we're like, wait a second, I can't remember what CJ was. I have to go find that file and like search through my emails to pull up the answer, like what? And so we want to make sure that it's easy, front and center on your phone, inside of a team meeting where you can pull up your map at any time. And so that's a really great way, Michelle, to be able to keep those insights front and center. And then another thing that we've done here at Leadr is adopted, like CJ mentioned, We might even put, in the calendar invite or at the top of the meeting or even in the agenda items, like this is a WI conversation. Like we're just wondering and inventing. We don't need to poke holes in this right now and think about how we're going to get this done. This is just a brainstorming meeting or a brainstorming topic within a meeting. And so really adopting that language has been a game changer for our own team here at Leadr. Well, I'm so sorry I didn't get to everyone's questions. We'll definitely be looking at these, and feel free to email me. I don't have it on a slide, but CJ and I are really easy to find. So it's just our first dot last name at leadr.com. Fully accessible. Feel free to ping us. We will be sending a recap email from our time together with the recording and all of the resources. But thank you so much for taking the time to, really invest in yourselves and your team by joining us today. And if there's anything we can do to help you and your teams be healthier and more effective, we're here to do it. Thank you, CJ. Have a great
Thanks,
day.
Holly. You too.
Bye, everybody.